Imagine waking up in 2025, but not in the world, No NATO, no European Union, no American-led global economy. Instead, the Soviet flag still flies strong, not as a relic of history, but as the banner of the world's dominant superpower. This is the alternate timeline where the USSR won the Cold War. Not by conquering the United States, but by simply surviving, expanding, and outperforming the West. To understand this world, we have to imagine a Soviet Union that never collapsed, never ran out of money, and never let reform spiral into rebellion. Instead, it adapted just enough to stay powerful, confident, and technologically competitive. In this version of history, the Soviet Union didn't crumble in 1991. Instead, it underwent a different kind of restructuring. The leadership kept strict political control but opened parts of the economy similar to China's model. State-controlled capitalism grew. Heavy industry modernized. Technology investment skyrocketed. And most importantly, Moscow learned from the mistakes of the 70s and 80s, especially in the space and military sectors. So what does Europe look like in 2025 in this alternate world? It's not united under the European Union. Instead, it's divided into two massive zones of influence. The western part, including the UK, France, and Italy, leans democratic and capitalist, but with much weaker coordination because NATO was never formed. Without the Soviet threat sweeping across Eastern Europe, the United States never had the unifying force that pushed Europe into a single military alliance. Eastern and Central Europe, on the other hand, are firmly under Moscow's orbit. Poland, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, all remain deeply integrated into a powerful Soviet-led economic bloc. Think of it like a stronger, wealthier, and more unified Warsaw Pact. Without the USSR's collapse, these nations never transitioned to free market democracies. Instead, they grew under a planned but modernized economy with global connections across Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Now let's talk technology and the space race. Because everything looks completely different. With the USSR winning the Cold War, they would have doubled down on the one thing that symbolized their global power: space dominance. In this timeline, they put permanent bases on the moon before the United States ever reached that scale. The first humans on Mars. Soviet cosmonauts, not American astronauts. By 2025, orbital stations aren't symbols of cooperation. They are symbols of rivalry, with Moscow running massive research platforms while the US struggles to keep pace. Instead of NASA leading global innovation, the world follows a Soviet space agency that focuses on military satellites, global surveillance systems, and deep space exploration as tools of ideological influence. If you think Starlink dominates today, imagine a world where the Soviets control the world's satellite internet networks, giving them both economic leverage and technological supremacy. When we shift to the global economy, the picture becomes even more dramatic. Today, the US dollar dominates world trade, but in this alternate timeline, it doesn't. Instead, a Soviet-backed global currency powered by alliances with India, China, and parts of Africa competes directly with the dollar. The world isn't unipolar or American-led. It's bipolar, but tilted toward Moscow. Multinational corporations like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, they probably exist in some form, but they are not the uncontested giants they are now. Instead, Soviet megacorporations, fully state-owned, dominate energy, aerospace, transportation, and technology. Oil pipelines stretch from Siberia to Europe, giving the USSR both wealth and strategic leverage. Countries dependent on Soviet fuel must follow Soviet political rules. And because the USSR never collapsed, China never becomes the world's factory. Instead, China develops as a junior partner to the USSR, not a rival superpower. Russia and China together form a massive sphere of influence that pulls much of Asia into its gravitational field. All of this sets the stage for a very different 2025. A world where democracy isn't the global default, capitalism isn't the global winner, and American pop culture doesn't dominate every screen. This is the world where the Soviet Union won. So now that we've built the geopolitical foundation of this alternate 2025, let's step inside the world itself. What does daily life look like when the Soviet Union, not the United States, shapes global culture, economics, and politics? First, let's talk about technology and innovation, because this world develops in a completely different direction. Without Silicon Valley as the global center of creativity, consumer tech is less focused on personal devices and more on state-driven tools. Smartphones still exist, but they're likely produced by large Soviet-backed companies prioritizing surveillance over style. Privacy laws, almost non-existent. Government monitoring is normalized, not controversial. Instead of social media giants like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok shaping global culture, the world is dominated by Soviet-style communication platforms. Controlled, regulated, and designed to reinforce government-approved narratives. Entertainment feels different too. Hollywood still exists, but it's no longer the world's cultural engine. Soviet cinema, with its deep emphasis on philosophy, ideology, and state heroism becomes a major global export. Movies glorifying space exploration, scientific achievement, and collective sacrifice replace today's superhero franchises. Even sports take on a political dimension. In our real world, the Olympics became a stage for country pride. But in a world where the USSR won, sports become tools of global messaging. Soviet athletes dominate international competitions year after year, showing the strength of the social system. Think of the Olympics not as friendly competition, but as a soft power battleground where Moscow consistently proves its superiority. Now, let's look at the global economy, because this might be the biggest change of all. The United States remains wealthy, but it is no longer the unmatched economic leader. American corporations grow more slowly, U.S. influence shrinks, and innovation feels more bureaucratic. Europe, divided and lacking NATO, struggles to compete with the massive Soviet economic bloc that spans from Eastern Europe to the Pacific. Meanwhile, the USSR turns Siberia into a superpowered economic engine. Massive infrastructure projects connect Russia, Mongolia, China, and Central Asia into a vast industrial corridor. Railroads faster than anything in the West cut through frozen landscapes, delivering minerals, oil, and manufactured goods across continents. By 2025, the Soviet economic model, centralized, long-term, resource-heavy, proves surprisingly efficient at controlling global supply chains. But this world isn't just about power, it's about how people live. In Soviet-influenced countries, life feels more collectivist and less individualistic. Housing is provided by the state. Education and healthcare are free, but heavily ideological. The average citizen has fewer personal freedoms, but more economic guarantees. In the West, especially the US, fears of Soviet influence push the country into a more closed, cautious, and militarized society. Think of America today, but with fewer global allies, tighter borders, and a constant focus on matching Soviet power. Without NATO, global conflicts look very different. The Middle East isn't shaped by US intervention. Instead, the USSR becomes the main player, supporting governments that align with its interests. Africa develops differently too. Many countries there rely on Soviet-built railroads, energy grids, and mining operations. Their political systems follow more authoritarian models because the West never becomes the dominant partner in their development. And then there's the biggest question of all: is the world safer? It's complicated. On one hand, with no single dominant superpower, the world becomes more balanced, but not more peaceful. Instead of one major ideological rivalry ending in the 1990s, the Cold War continues into 2025. The US and the USSR still compete in space, technology, and influence. Nuclear weapons remain a daily concern, and large-scale proxy conflicts pop up around the world as both sides fight for strategic territory. But there's another side to this world too, a world where scientific cooperation looks different. A world where space colonization advanced faster because the USSR prioritized it. A world where authoritarian systems are normalized. A world where capitalism didn't become the global blueprint. This is a 2025 shaped not by Silicon Valley, Hollywood, or Wall Street, but by Moscow, state planning, and an ideology that never collapsed. A world that feels familiar, yet completely transformed. Some questions don't have simple answers. But what do you think? Is this the truth, or just the beginning? Subscribe to Era X to explore more. Until next time, welcome to a new era.